My dad's fist slams the table so hard the dishes rattle and he yells, "You owe us, you selfish brat." All because I said no more funding their luxury trips. I'm Kinsley, a tech worker who thought helping family was what you do, until I saw Cash Cow pop up in our chat after pouring $20,000 into their Outer Banks vacations. What started as a few bucks for BBQ ribs turned into a decade of them leaning on me hard until I walked out that door and never looked back. How far would you go for family before you draw the line? Drop your thoughts below. I'd love to hear what you do in my shoes. I handed Mom my credit card for the BBQ ribs that summer, thinking it was just a one-time thing. Boy, was I wrong. The afternoon sun hung heavy over Raleigh, North Carolina, baking the backyard into a sticky haze. Smoke curled up from the grill where Dad was tending the meat, and the kids, my nieces and nephews, darted around with sweet tea sloshing in their plastic cups. I was perched on a lawn chair, still in my work jeans from the tech support gig I'd landed a couple years back. The pay was decent, $60,000 a year, and I felt good about it, like I'd finally carved out a little spot for myself after all those lean college days. So when Mom started fussing over the grocery bill, I didn't hesitate. "Oh, Kinsley, I didn't budget right this time," Ramona said, her voice a mix of worry and that sly edge I'd grown up hearing. She stood by the picnic table, apron smudged with sauce, counting out the cost of ribs and buns on her fingers, $50 give or take. Her graying hair was pulled back tight, and those sharp hazel eyes flicked to me like she already knew what I'd do. I slid my card across the table with a grin. "I got it, Mom," I said, and her face lit up, all teeth and relief. "You're a lifesaver, honey," she chirped, tucking the card into her pocket like it was hers to keep. It felt nice, that little glow of being needed, and I didn't think much of it then. Just $50, a drop in the bucket. Later, as the smell of charred burgers filled the air, Dad wandered over, spatula in hand. Grady's a big guy, broad shoulders and a voice that carries, even when he's trying to keep it low. He leaned in close, the sweat beading on his forehead catching the light. "We're thinking of hitting Outer Banks for a weekend soon," he said, flipping a patty with a practiced flick. "Gas ain't cheap, you know." He didn't ask outright, but the way he paused, eyebrows raised, told me what he wanted. I nodded, wiping my hands on my jeans. "I'll cover it," I said, picturing the drive down 64, the salt air rushing through open windows. It'd be maybe $60, $70 tops. Not a big deal. I liked feeling useful, like I was holding up my end of the family after years of them holding up mine. Grady clapped me on the shoulder, muttering a quick, "good girl," before heading back to the grill. The afternoon wore on, lazy and loud, with cousins shouting and the hum of cicadas kicking in as the sun dipped lower. I was grabbing a soda from the cooler when Uncle Elton sidled up, his wiry frame casting a thin shadow. He's Mom's older brother, pushing 50, with a quiet way about him that always made me listen when he spoke. His glasses glinted as he tipped his head toward me, voice soft but firm. "You're too generous, Kinsley," he said, nodding at the card still peeking out of Mom's apron across the yard. "Don't let them lean on you too much, kid." I laughed it off, popping the tab on my can with a hiss. "It's just a little help, Uncle Elton," I replied, brushing past the unease in his eyes. He didn't push it, just gave me a long look before wandering off to chat with the uncles by the shed. By the time the fireflies started blinking, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Holden, my big brother, sprawled somewhere in his apartment across town. "Need $100 for some new kicks," his text read, followed by a winking emoji. "Tech money, right?" I rolled my eyes but couldn't help a smile. He'd always been the charming one, coasting through his 30s with that easy grin. I tapped out a quick Venmo transfer, figuring it was no skin off my back. The job was steady. The bank account was healthy. $50 here, $100 there didn't sting yet. I tucked my phone away, watching the kids chase each other through the grass, their laughter bouncing off the humid air. Life felt simple then, like I was just pitching in for the folks who'd raised me. As I gathered my stuff to head home, the sky turning a bruised purple, Mom caught me by the car. Her hands were still sticky with sauce, and she wiped them on her apron before resting one on my arm. "Kinsley," she said, her voice dropping into that warm, coaxing tone I knew too well. Next year, we could do something bigger. Rent a beach house at Outer Banks, maybe. Think you're up for it? She tilted her head, eyes wide with hope, and I felt that familiar tug, part guilt, part pride. I shrugged, keys jangling in my hand. Yeah, maybe, I said, climbing into the driver's seat. She waved as I pulled away, her figure shrinking in the rearview mirror. I didn't know it then, but that little maybe was the first step down a road I couldn't see the end of. Sometimes you give an inch and folks take a mile, but wisdom comes slow when you're young and want to please. By 2018, I was shelling out thousands for beach houses, and they didn't even flinch when the bills landed in my lap. It had been 3 years since that sticky summer BBQ when I first slid my card across the picnic table, and somehow, without me quite noticing, helping out had turned into something else entirely. I'd sit on my Raleigh porch after work, the evening heat still clinging to the air, and feel Uncle Elton's words from back then creeping into my thoughts. They'll lean on you. Less like advice now and more like a curse I couldn't shake. Those early days of $50 here and $100 there had morphed into a habit I didn't know how to break. And the family? They just kept leaning. It started small, back in the summer of 2016. I was over at Mom and Dad's, the backyard buzzing with cousins and the faint hum of cicadas. Ramona was pacing by the kitchen door, her apron swapped for a sundress, her voice tight with that familiar edge. "We need this, Kinsley," she sighed, flipping through a rental listing for Outer Banks on her phone, a modest beach house, $800 for the week. Her eyes darted to me, wide and pleading, like a kid asking for a toy she couldn't afford. The guilt tugged at me hard. Those lean years when they'd scraped by to keep me in school flashed through my mind. I pulled up the booking site on my laptop right there, the glow of the screen cutting through the dusk. "Okay, Mom," I said, clicking confirm. "I'll take care of it." She clapped her hands together a little too quick and hugged me tight. "You're the best," she whispered, and I felt that old glow again, useful, needed. The sand was hot underfoot that week, the salty breeze whipping through my hair as we unpacked coolers of shrimp and beer, but I didn't mind the cost then. It was just once, I told myself. By 2018, though, just once was a distant memory. I was hunched over my desk one July afternoon, juggling overdue work emails, when my phone rang, Grady's name flashing on the screen. "Hey, kiddo," he started, his voice gruff but cheerful. "We're going bigger this year. Outer Banks again. Nicer house. Flights for the whole crew." He rattled off the plan like it was already set. $3,000, maybe more. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the mute button, but he kept going. "You've got that tech money, right? We're counting on you." I muttered a weak "sure" and hung up, opening my bank app with a sinking feeling. The transfer went through, $3,000 gone, and a week later, there I was, standing on a wraparound deck overlooking the Atlantic. Holden plopped down beside me, cracking open a crab leg I'd paid for, his grin wide as he licked the butter off his fingers. "Living the dream, huh, sis?" he said, tipping his Bud Light my way. I forced a smile, but my eyes lingered on the cooler stuffed with seafood and drinks. All mine to fund, apparently. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from Uncle Elton. "Saw the crab legs, Bill? Watch yourself." I didn't reply, just stared out at the waves crashing in the dark. Fast forward to 2020, and the world was just clawing its way out of lockdown. I'd spent months cooped up in my Raleigh apartment, the silence broken only by Zoom calls and the occasional grocery run. Then came the family group chat lighting up. Plans for a big Outer Banks reunion. No asking, just doing. "We deserve this after everything," Ramona typed, and the cousins chimed in with emojis and, "Yes!" I didn't even get a say before the rental link popped up. A sprawling house, $5,000 for the week. My fingers moved on autopilot, booking it, wiring the money, the numbers flashing red in my account. That summer, the beach was packed with us. Kids splashing, uncles grilling, Ramona snapping photos. But I felt off like a stranger in my own story. Later, back home, I slumped at my desk, flipping through old pics on my phone, us laughing on the shore, beers raised, waves in the background. My chest tightened as the truth sank in. $5,000 vanished, and it wasn't even my fun. I pulled up a spreadsheet that night, every dollar I'd spent glaring back at me like a neon sign. $800, $3,000, now $5,000. The totals climbed fast, and I wondered how I'd let it get this far. I was still staring at those numbers when my phone lit up again. Grady's name bold and insistent. "Next year's gonna be epic," his text read. "Outer Banks again. You're in, right?" I set the phone down, the screen glowing in the quiet room, and rubbed my temples. The salty breeze and crab legs didn't feel like a reward anymore. They felt like a trap. You can give folks your all, but sometimes they'll take it and still ask for more. I just hadn't learned that yet. Seeing cash cow pop up in the family chat wasn't just a jab. It was a wake-up call I couldn't ignore. Fall had settled over Raleigh by then, the evenings turning cool and crisp, with orange leaves piling up against my apartment steps like a carpet I didn't have the heart to sweep away. I'd been restless all day, the weight of Dad's last text. "We're counting on you for something big next summer," still hanging over me like a storm cloud that wouldn't break. I'd spent years footing the bill for their beach trips, watching the numbers climb on that spreadsheet I'd started, and somewhere along the line, Uncle Elton's old warning had gone from a whisper to a looped track in my head. "They'll keep leaning." I'd brushed it off back at that BBQ in 15, but now, 7 summers later, it was starting to sound like the truest thing he'd ever said. I was curled up on my couch that night, the glow of my phone cutting through the dim room when the group chat flared to life. The cousins were at it again, planning next year's Outer Banks trip like it was a done deal. Dates tossed around, house links shared, the usual chaos. I scrolled through, half listening to the ping, ping, ping of messages until one stopped me cold. My cousin Derek, some loudmouth I hadn't seen since he crashed on my couch last Christmas, typed it out plain as day. "Kinsley's our cash cow, ha-ha." The laughing emoji blinked back at me, and I felt my jaw tighten so hard my teeth ached. I waited, breath held, for Mom or Dad to jump in, to say something, anything to shut it down. But the chat went quiet. Ramona and Grady didn't type a word. My thumb hovered over the screen, then pressed down, snapping a screenshot before the moment could slip away. I stared at it, that ugly phrase glowing in black and white, and something shifted inside me, like a lock clicking open after years of rust. I couldn't sit still after that. I dialed Holden, my fingers shaky as I paced the hardwood floor of my apartment, the old boards creaking underfoot. He picked up on the third ring, his voice thick with that lazy drawl he'd perfected over the years. "Hey sis, what's up?" he mumbled, like he was half asleep on his couch across town. "Did you see that?" I asked, my words sharp enough to cut through his haze. "Derek's little cash cow joke in the chat. Did you see it?" There was a pause, a rustle like he was shifting to sit up, then a low chuckle. "Yeah, I saw it. You've always paid. What's the big deal?" My pacing stopped dead, and I gripped the phone tighter, the plastic creaking in my hand. "The big deal?" I snapped. "It's been thousands, Holden. Thousands, and they're laughing about it." He sighed, long and tired. "You're overreacting. It's just family." I didn't say another word, just hung up, the silence ringing louder than his excuses. I tossed the phone onto the couch and ran my hands through my hair, the frustration boiling up so fast I could barely breathe. The next call came an hour later as I was rinsing dishes in the kitchen, the warm water doing nothing to calm me down. Ramona's name flashed on the screen, and I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. "Kinsley, honey," she started, her voice dripping with that syrupy sweetness she saved for moments like this. "We're counting on you for next summer, you know that, right?" I could picture her on the other end, twirling the cord of their old landline, her lips pursed in that hopeful little pout. My sponge froze mid-scrub, suds dripping onto the counter. "Not this time, Mom," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my gut. She gasped, sharp and dramatic, like I'd slapped her through the phone. "What do you mean? Not this time," she pressed, the sweetness gone, replaced by an edge I knew too well. "I mean, I'm done paying for everything," I shot back, dropping the sponge into the sink. "I've been your bank for years, and I'm done." She didn't reply right away, just a stunned silence, then a shaky, "We'll talk about this later," before the line went dead. I stood there, staring at the faucet drip, feeling the weight of that no settle in. I tossed my phone onto the couch after that, the screen dark and still, and leaned against the kitchen counter, gripping the edge until my knuckles turned white. Done being their bank, done pretending it was okay. That's what I told myself over and over as the anger steadied me. My spreadsheet was open on my laptop across the room, the total glaring back at me. $20,000, give or take, poured into their vacations, their crab legs, their good times. I'd let it happen, step by step, because I thought that's what family did, carry each other. But standing there, the cool night air slipping through the cracked window, I saw it clear as day. They weren't carrying me, they were riding me. My chest heaved as I steadied myself against the counter, the realization sinking deep. Then, late, too late for polite folks, my phone buzzed again. I crossed the room, the floor cold under my bare feet, and picked it up. Grady's name stared back at me, his text short and blunt. "Come to the house tomorrow. This isn't over." I set the phone down slow, my hands steady now, and looked out at the Raleigh night, the streetlights flickering through the leaves. Maybe it wasn't over for him, but for me, it was the start of something new. You can love folks with all you've got, but when they start seeing you as a means instead of a person, it's time to draw a line. I stepped into Mom and Dad's house expecting a lecture, but Dad's fist crashing on the table told me this was war. The crisp fall air had followed me up the driveway that afternoon in 2023, leaves crunching under my boots as I braced myself for whatever was coming. I'd barely slept after Grady's late-night text. "This isn't over." The words looping in my head alongside Holden's dismissive, "What's the big deal?" from the day before. It lingered now, sharp and personal, as I pushed open the front door of their Raleigh suburban home. Inside, the air hung heavy, stifling despite the open windows, with the faint sting of burnt toast still clinging from breakfast. I'd spent years bending under their weight, but today, something in me had snapped. I wasn't their cash cow anymore, and they were about to find out. Grady was already pacing when I walked into the kitchen, his big frame filling the space like a storm brewing. His flannel shirt strained at the shoulders, and his voice came out low, gruff, like he was holding back a shout. "We didn't raise you to turn your back on us, Kinsley," he said, his boots scuffing the linoleum as he moved. I dropped my purse on the counter, the thud cutting through the silence, and faced him square. "Turn my back?" I fired back, my voice steady despite the heat rising in my chest. "I've paid $20,000 for your trips, your Outer Banks houses. How's that turning my back?" He stopped mid-step, his eyes narrowing, but I didn't flinch. The spreadsheet I'd been staring at for months flashed in my mind. Every dollar I'd poured into their vacations, every crab leg they'd cracked open on my dime. I'd laid it out plain, and for once, he didn't have a quick comeback. He just stared, jaw working like he was chewing on something he couldn't spit out. Ramona was next, stepping in from the living room with her hands clasped tight, her face a mask of hurt. She'd always been good at this, turning on the waterworks when words failed her, and sure enough, tears welled up as she sank into a chair. "This is what family does, Kinsley," she said, her voice trembling just enough to tug at old strings. She clutched her cheeks, fingers pressing into her skin, and I caught the faintest glint of calculation behind those wet eyes. I rolled mine so hard I felt it in my neck. She was playing me like always, the same act she'd pulled since I was a kid. "Family doesn't mean I bankroll everything, Mom," I said, crossing my arms. "I've given enough." Her tears didn't stop, but her lips pursed, and I saw the shift. She wasn't winning this time. I turned away, staring at the faded rooster clock ticking above the sink, its hands stuck at 10 past noon like time had frozen in this house long ago. Then Grady erupted. He'd been simmering, but my words lit the fuse. His fist slammed down on the table hard enough to rattle the dishes, stacked in the drying rack, a mug teetering before settling back. "You owe us, you selfish brat," he roared, his face flushing red, veins bulging at his temples. The room shook with it, and for a split second I felt that old fear, the little girl who'd shrink when he raised his voice, but I wasn't her anymore. I stood up straight, snatched my keys from the counter, the metal cool against my palm, and locked eyes with him. "I'm done," I said, each word clipped and final. His mouth opened, but I didn't wait. I turned for the door, my boots thudding against the floor. "Walk out and don't come back," he shouted after me, his voice cracking at the end. I didn't look back, just pushed through the screen door, letting it slam shut behind me with a bang that echoed down the street. The cool air hit my face as I stormed to my car, my heart hammering so loud I could feel it in my throat. Years of their weight, every guilt trip, every bill, every "we need this," lifted off my shoulders with that slam, leaving me lighter than I'd been in a decade. I slid into the driver's seat, hands trembling on the wheel, and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Grady's red-faced glare burned in my mind, his fist still clenched in memory, while Ramona's fake sobs played their tired tune. Freedom was worth this fight, I told myself, worth every ugly word and slammed door. I'd carried them long enough. My phone buzzed as I turned the key, the engine rumbling to life. I glanced at it on the passenger seat. Ramona's name, her text short and sharp. "You'll regret this, Kinsley." I didn't open it, just let it sit there, the screen fading to black as I pulled out of the driveway. The leaves swirled behind me, caught in the wake of my tires, and I kept my eyes on the road ahead. Maybe she was right. Maybe regret would come knocking someday. But right then, all I felt was the open stretch of pavement and the quiet promise of a life that was finally mine. Folks can demand your loyalty, but when it's built on their gain and your loss, walking away's the only victory left. Mom's Facebook post popped up mid-scroll, and just like that, I'm the bad guy in front of everyone we know. Winter had crept into Raleigh by late 2023, dusting my apartment window with a thin layer of snow that muffled the world outside. I'd been restless since walking out on Mom and Dad a few weeks back, replaying Grady's "Don't come back" in my head. Not a bluff, it turned out, but a battle cry. The chill outside was nothing compared to the storm brewing on my phone, a battlefield of pings and notifications I couldn't escape. I tossed my keys on the counter after a quiet grocery run, expecting a slow evening when Ramona's words lit up my screen like a flare. I'd known they'd push back after I ditched their cash cow game, but this was something else. I was sprawled on my couch, wrapped in a faded quilt when I saw it. The post was short, dripping with that martyr tone Mom had perfected over the years. Sometimes family lets you down when you need them most. No names, but the timing wasn't subtle. Everyone knew who she meant. I scrolled down, my stomach twisting into knots as the likes piled up. Cousins I'd bankrolled for years, their little heart icons stacking like accusations. My cousin Tara, who'd flown to Outer Banks on my dime last summer, chimed in first. "Ungrateful much?" The words stung, sharp and cold, and I gripped my phone tighter, watching the comments grow. Aunt Sue, Uncle Ray, even folks I hadn't seen since Grandma's funeral, all nodding along like I'd torched the family tree instead of just stopped paying for it. I tossed the quilt aside and stood, pacing the room as the snowflakes tapped the glass, my breath fogging in the chill. They'd turned the world against me overnight, and it hit harder than I'd expected. The next call came the following afternoon, as spring started teasing its way in by March 2024, the snow melting into muddy yards and dogwoods budding outside. I was sorting laundry, trying to keep my hands busy, when Holden's name flashed on my screen. I answered, bracing myself, and his voice came through thick with irritation. "Kinsley, why are you dragging this out?" he grumbled like I was the one stirring the pot. "Just pay up and let it go. Everyone's pissed." I stopped folding, a sock dangling in my hand, and let out a sharp laugh. "Pay up? Holden. I've shelled out $20,000 since 2015. Check my receipts if you don't believe me." He huffed, the sound crackling through the line. "You're making it worse. Mom's a mess." I clenched my jaw, the sock hitting the floor. "Maybe she should have thought of that before calling me out online," I snapped and hung up before he could argue. I stormed to my desk, yanking open my laptop. Those bank statements I'd tracked for years spilled across the screen. Every transfer a brick in the wall I'd built and they'd climbed over. That night, with the muddy yards glistening under streetlights and the first spring crickets chirping, I decided I'd had enough. I sat cross-legged on the couch, my phone balanced on my knee, and typed out my own post. $20,000 since 2015. Here's the proof I'm no cash cow. I attached the screenshots, rental payments, flight receipts, Venmo logs, and hit send, my finger trembling just a bit. The screen stayed quiet for a minute, then exploded. Likes, shares, messages from old friends popping up like fireflies. "Is this for real?" one texted. "Kinsley, I had no idea," another wrote. I leaned back, watching the numbers climb, when my phone rang again. Uncle Elton this time, his voice steady through the static. "I've seen their game for years," he said, calm but firm. "You're not alone in this, kid. I'm proud of you." I swallowed hard, his words cutting through the chaos like a lifeline, and managed a quiet, "Thanks, Uncle Elton," before he hung up. My post kept spreading, and for the first time, the questions started flying their way instead of mine. Families' lies cracking open under the weight of truth. I was still on the couch hours later, scrolling through the comments, some shocked, some supportive, when my phone buzzed with a new text. Ramona's name glowed in the dark, her message short. "We're sorry, Kinsley. Can we talk?" I stared at it, the words blurring as the crickets sang outside, and set the phone down without replying. The quilt was back around my shoulders now, the room warm with the hum of spring creeping in, and I felt a strange calm settle over me. They'd turned the world against me, but I'd turned it back. And Uncle Elton's voice lingered, a steady anchor in the storm. "Life's funny that way. You can carry folks for miles, but when they drop you, it's the ones who stay quiet who lift you up again." I let Mom's sorry text hang there unanswered. Peace feels better than their groveling ever could. Summer 2024 had rolled into Raleigh with a lazy warmth, the late sun spilling across my apartment balcony as I stretched out in a wicker chair. The cicadas were buzzing up a storm in the trees below, their hum blending with the quiet clink of ice in a pitcher of lemonade sweating on the table. It had been months since that showdown at Mom and Dad's, weeks since Ramona's last-ditch plea flickered across my screen, and I still hadn't typed a reply. Uncle Elton's voice from that BBQ back in 15, "Don't let them lean," echoed in my mind, clear as day now. I'd carried their load for nearly a decade, but I'd shed it at last, and the lightness felt like a gift I hadn't known I needed. I'd spent the afternoon flipping through my phone, the sun dipping low and painting the sky in streaks of gold and pink. My thumb hovered over the photo app, then dove in. Years of Outer Banks pics stared back at me, snapshots of smiles I'd paid for with cash and quiet resentment. There we were, sprawled on sandy decks, Holden with a beer, cousins tossing frisbees, Ramona posing with a shrimp skewer, all of it bankrolled by me, $20,000 worth of memories that weren't really mine. I started swiping, delete, 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 watching those grins vanish one by one. The screen cleared out fast, and I leaned back, the knot in my chest loosening with every tap. It wasn't just pictures I was letting go of. It was the weight of being their wallet, their cash cow, their means to an end. The balcony railing was warm under my hand as I set the phone down, the cicadas filling the silence with their steady song. Then my phone rang, cutting through the hum, and I smiled when I saw Uncle Elton's name. I picked up, leaning against the railing as his steady voice came through. "Kinsley," he said, a grin in his tone, "you did what I couldn't. Stood up to them. Took guts, kid." I could hear the clatter of a spatula in the background, the sizzle of meat on a grill. He was already prepping for something. "BBQ at my place this weekend," he added. "You in?" I grinned wide, the first real one in weeks, and tilted my head back to catch the fading sun. "I'm there," I said, picturing his backyard, the smell of smoke and sauce, a gathering that wouldn't come with a bill attached. Good, he chuckled. Bring nothing but yourself. I've got the rest. I hung up, the warmth of his words settling in, a reminder that family didn't have to mean obligation. He'd been there all along, quiet but solid, and I felt steadier knowing it. The evening deepened, the sky turning a soft purple, when my phone buzzed again, twice this time, back to back. I glanced down, and there they were, Ramona and Grady, one last desperate plea in tandem. Mom's text popped up first. We're family, Kinsley, don't throw us away. Dad's followed, shorter but heavier. Think about what you're doing. I stared at the words, the cicadas droning on, and felt nothing. No guilt, no tug, just a calm I hadn't known in years. My finger slid to the block button, first hers, then his, and with 2 quick taps, they were gone, silenced for good. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a long, slow breath that seemed to carry the last of their hold with it. The pitcher glistened with condensation, and I reached for it, the cool glass slick against my palm as I poured a tall one. No more groveling, no more games. My bank account was mine again, $20,000 lighter from their greed, but I'd gained something they couldn't touch. I sipped the lemonade, the tartness sharp on my tongue, and let my gaze drift over the Raleigh skyline, the lights flickering on as dusk settled in. The Outer Banks stretched out in my mind, not their version, crowded with demands, but mine, quiet and free. I wondered who I'd take there next year. Maybe Uncle Elton, maybe a friend, maybe just me. My choice, my rules. The cicadas kept up their chorus, a sound as old as time, and I smiled into the night. You can spend years holding folks up, but when you finally let go, the ones who matter stick around, and that's the real treasure. As I sipped that lemonade on my balcony, the Raleigh sunset glowing soft and warm, I felt the quiet freedom of a life no longer tied to their demands. Uncle Elton's steady voice in those years of carrying my family taught me this. Love shouldn't weigh you down. It should lift you up, and sometimes letting go is the kindest gift you can give yourself. In this life, if we listen more than we lean, we find the folks who truly matter, the ones who stay without asking for a dime. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe you've got a story of your own about finding peace in the tough moments. Feel free to share it with me below.